very good evening to you this 26th day of December 2018. Thank you so much for making time for us in our top stories. Tonight, the political debts, promises and MOUs. The gloves are off this Boxing Day. Also tonight, the whereabouts of a child rescued from a forced marriage are still unknown.
One of the relatives called me, aliniambia Kenya ni pesa. Kuna watu hata waliuliwa na bado wako nje. So who are you to us? Saving a girl from marriage is just a minor thing.
Plus,
I instructed that a task force be established.
Kama ningepewa nafasi ya kukaa chini na rais, akuja asikize mkulima wa chini, amwambie shida zake.
The spoonfuls of hope against the tons of pain afflicting sugarcane farmers on the sugarcane. And let there be sight.
We have to cut the cornea at a certain point depending on the size of the cornea of the patient.
A step-by-step look into how doctors repair a damaged cornea.
NTV Tonight with Zainab Ismail.
Thank you so much for watching. Our sign language interpreter this evening is David Agondoa. Now, a Kikuyu-Luhya alliance may be in the offing ahead of the 2022 general elections. This emerged today after Jubilee Vice Chairperson David Murathe declared that the Kikuyu community has never entered into a pre-election pact with any community or politician. The remarks made in Vihiga this afternoon are likely to ruffle feathers in Deputy President William Ruto's camp, which has been perceived to be ranking on a political backing from Mount Kenya in the 2022 polls. Oko Kusa reports.
It was during the 39th edition of the Maragoli cultural celebrations held here at the municipal grounds in Mbale, Vihiga County, that the emotive political debt debate was rekindled. Murathe told the gathering that President Kenyatta and his deputy had already served for 2 terms and therefore should both retire come 2022. Murathe also took issues with the DP for opposing the push for a referendum even before Jubilee as a party takes a position over the matter.
Kama William Samoei Ruto apendi, atengeneze kikosi chake kije na no. Na sisi tutasema yes. Yes. Yes.
Politicians from the Abaluya community who had thrown their weight behind the deputy president were lambasted.
Wala alikuwa hapa akikuombea, akikupigia debe, akipigia nasa debe. Sasa ameshanunuliwa, ameenda, amekuwa mtu wa mtu mwingine.
Until and unless we are united and speaking with one indivisible voice, we shall be unattractive to any potential partner.
Oko Kusa, NTV.
Now, the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Chairperson Wafula Chebukati says there is no urgency to deal with the electoral boundaries review. It is allowed by law to happen between the 8th and 12 years from the last one. Chebukati was addressing himself to the growing debate on boundary review that has some political leaders expressing opposition, largely due to the view that some electoral units may collapse. And Vincent Odwar with the details.
IEBC has refuted claims that it is under pressure to conduct the much-awaited electoral boundary review. Chairman Wafula Chebukati insists the exercise will only happen after the results of the national census.
The census is next year, a few days away. That will be done in August 24th, 25th night next year. We are not under pressure as a commission to deal with the issue of boundaries because we have up to 2024.
The law provides that the review of boundaries should be after 8 to 12 years. A group of politicians, among them Deputy President William Ruto, has opposed the referendum, citing various reasons, chiefly that it is meant to secure political positions for fellow politicians. But there has also been opposition to the referendum based on boundary reviews.
Basi haya maneno ni yetu sisi wenyewe kama wananchi. Leo ikiwa tuko na MCA hata kama ni watatu, lakini kila MCA katika kila eneo ana majukumu. Kwa hivyo leo tukiambiwa tushikanishe constituency ama tushikanishe hizi wodi, tusikubali jamani.
There will be no discussion on how to fold counties or how to fold the devolution so that we can centralize things anymore. That discussion, I think, was made and a decision was made long time ago.
The IEBC chairman sees no urgency despite the growing debate about the review, but he asserts that the electoral body is ready to conduct a referendum anytime as long as it has received the proposed referendum question and other legal requirements to process the exercise.
The commission is ready for a referendum. For us, a referendum is just one election. So far, we have not received any referendum questions to process. I know there are people collecting signatures on various issues, but they have not come to us. They have to present the signatures to us, 1 million signatures together with the referendum bill, which we have yet to receive.
For a while now, the referendum debate has created division among the political leaders in the country. Deputy President William Ruto and his allies have opposed to constitutional changes, while opposition leader Raila Odinga and his allies insist that a referendum to amend the 2010 constitution is inevitable.
The winner takes it all is a recipe for chaos in this country. We must be having in this country a very vibrant opposition. So I don't see why when you run for president and you lose, you go home. We must make it. We must create a structure that there is the leader of official opposition in parliament. So then you check the government and you become an alternative government.
Chebukati was at Sayua National Park in Trans Nzoia County, where he participated in a 7-kilometer walk organized by Nyumbani Kwetu initiatives to raise funds towards the conservation of endangered rare antelopes. Vincent Odur, NTV.
Now, the chief and the assistant chief of Mogokosiek location, Bomet County, have been interdicted and 4 suspects arrested following an incident in which children were hospitalized after drinking illicit brew. The 2 officers could face disciplinary action if ongoing investigations reveal negligence on their part. This incident comes just 2 days after a 14-year-old primary school pupil was arrested in Kedoa town with 10 rolls of bang weighing 750 grams. The Ringa primary school pupil was intercepted at Kedoa shopping center by Kedoa Acting Assistant Chief John Ngetich, who had been informed by members of the public. Now, the Kenya National Union of Teachers insists the strike is still on in January and has ignored calls from the teachers' employer TSC to get back to the negotiating table. NAT says TSC must first withdraw all transfer letters issued to some 3,000 teachers, and that should take effect from January before any further talks. The TSC had 2 days ago written to the Ministry of Labour saying it was ready for talks, but as Daniel Muller reports, several leaders and stakeholders are calling for a softening of headline positions for the sake of the country's students.
With just a week before schools open for the first time in January 2019, there is still uncertainty to whether students will have an extended holiday. The Kenya National Union of Teachers, NAT, says the strike is still on. Speaking to NTV on phone, NAT Deputy Secretary General Hesbon Atieno Agola accused the Teachers Service Commission of not negotiating in good faith. 2 days ago, TSC wrote to the Ministry of Labour stating its willingness to sit down with NAT for talks. NAT, through Secretary General Hesbon, claims the TSC was untruthful and had disregarded the directive by the Ministry of Labour to cancel the over 3,000 teacher transfers slated for January. NAT says the affected teachers had already received their transfer letters. The transfer of teachers is a hotly contested issue, and NAT says it will not take part in the negotiations to avert the strike if the TSC does not recall the transfer letters. The TSC, however, in its letter to the Ministry of Labour dated the 24th of December, expressed, as they put it, deep surprise that NAT had issued a strike notice over issues that were subject to ongoing negotiations. TSC said it was committed to talks and would file a memorandum in response to issues raised by NAT within 7 days. A number of stakeholders, including the clergy, have called upon the parties involved to soften their tough positions and end the stalemate for the sake of the country's students.
So as a church, we are requesting the teachers' union and the government, please sit down and sort out the issues without sacrificing the life and education of our students.
Mr. Amina kama waziri na ambaye ni msichana unatoka hapa Western, sit down with the teachers and talk. The teachers have a point, you have a point. Have a middle ground and agree. This country cannot afford strikes day in, day out.
NAT, while announcing the strike that should take effect when schools reopen in January, said it was aggrieved by the TSC's failure to promote teachers on merit, failure to honor previous CBAs with NAT, and what they termed as irregular transfer of teachers. Daniel Mule, NTV.
Now, the family of Lillian Mwikali, who was murdered in Malindi in 2012, is petitioning the Director of Public Prosecution, Nordin Haji, and Attorney General Paul Kihara to appeal against the acquittal of 3 suspects by a Malindi court last week. Mwikali was brutally murdered over a suspected property tussle. A ruling issued by Justice Weldon Korir set all the suspects free, leaving the family of the deceased hopeless and feeling justice has been denied. NTV's Seth Olale reports.
It's here on the slopes of Veti Hills in Midanga Village, Machakos County, where 80-year-old Dishon Tua, father of the late Lillian Mwikali, has been vividly staring the grave of her lifeless daughter, who was buried 6 years ago. Tua, who also buried his wife here, has been visiting the family graveyard almost daily since laying to rest the body of her 52-year-old daughter in 2012. However, since the acquittal of the suspects in Lillian Mwikali's murder by a Malindi court last week, visiting her daughter's graveyard has become a nightmare. The murder victim's family says the ruling by Justice Weldon Korir has denied their late daughter justice.
It actually caught us by surprise because according to what we know, there is more than enough evidence that the Dutch man by the name Hendrikus van Waf is the one who killed our sister Lillian Mwikali Andre.
The family, which also learned about the acquittal of their suspects through the media on 20th December 2018, are also crying foul about the manner in which the case was handled. On November 14th, 2012, the deceased, who had been staying in Germany from the year 1980, had come to reclaim property that reportedly belonged to her late German husband. However, that visit turned tragic as Mwikali's body was later found stuffed in a septic tank at the Sailfish Club, with her hands tied with bed sheets. Her head was found inside a polythene bag. Hendrikus van Waf, a Dutch national, his Kenyan wife Vera Juliet Anyango, and their hotel manager Said Abdallah Kadenge were paraded as the main suspects and charged with the murder of Lillian Wikali Andre on November 14, 2012. The couple claimed to be proprietors of Sailfish Club, a big game fishing club hotel in Malindi, while Said Kadenge was the manager.
There was evidence produced in court that there were threats. There were even letters produced written by Mwikali herself, which were she wrote to the police, informing them that she was being threatened. And these letters were produced in court.
Justice Weldon Korir ruled that the prosecution failed to prove that the three accused persons murdered Mwikali, as they based their case on circumstantial evidence, in that, apart from establishing the existence of a land dispute, the prosecution failed to show that any of the accused persons had the intention to kill the deceased as a result of the dispute. The latest push by the family may yet open yet another chapter in a horrific, if morbidly intriguing case. Seth Olale, NTV.
Now, two visually impaired students from Mandera County have defied all odds and passed well in the KCSE exams this year. The two former Thika School for the Blind students, Alim Bash and Abdi Latif, scored B and C+ respectively. They aspire to be teachers to help and educate people who also are visually impaired.
These two blind students from Mandera County, Alim Bash and Abdilatif Aden, have defied all odds and managed to score B plain and C+ respectively in this year's KCSE exam. The two surprised many by overcoming major hurdles to emerge among the best visually impaired students in the country. The thrilled former Thika School for the Blind students say the secret of their success was hard work, discipline and persistence.
I was very disciplined. During those 4 years I have been in that school, I was never even punished a single time.
A very obedient student. I was listening to my teachers.
Despite studying away from home in an environment that was unknown to them, they soldiered on and managed to finish secondary education. Some of their fellow students from Northeastern left the school because of the unfamiliar environment.
More than 16 students, they have run away from the school because of the environment that is there. CRE, they have to get in the church.
The visually impaired students say they were not surprised at their results and were actually hoping for better. Abdilatif Aden, who is inspiring to be a teacher, said he was inspired to help and educate people who are visually impaired as he is. The two argued that their success is testimony that disability is not a barrier and people with disability can achieve what the ordinary person can do, if not better.
Disability is not inability. A disabled person can achieve that which can be achieved by anybody else.
Alim and Abdilatif, who hail from Libahiya Ward and Ramo in Mandera County, had a dream to join dream universities. But they fear they may not fulfill those dreams as they cannot afford the school fees.
So I want to ask them to help me up to the next level. I will be very glad to see them helping me.
Ahmed Abdi, NTV, Mandera.
All right, and away from that, the whereabouts of a 15-year-old girl who was rescued from a forced marriage in Nairobi's Eastleigh estate cannot be established for a second straight day. She was last seen in the custody of police officers at the Pangani police station, but can now not be traced. An activist who alerted police to the planned forced marriage has also been receiving threats from the missing girl's relatives. The girl had passed her KCPE exam with 313 marks and wanted to carry on with her studies. All right, and we'll be having that report later on in just a short moment. But before that, we take a look at our other stories where now the family of Lillian, apologies for that. Now, a section of ODM party leaders have said that the only way to tackle challenges ailing the country is by having a referendum to change the 2010 constitution to gratify the needs of majority of Kenyans. The legislators who had attended a public rally in Ethiwa town insist that the decision on whether or not to hold the referendum lies with Kenyans and not top politicians in the country.
We cannot allow any single person to attempt to stop the impending referendum. The year 2019 is the year of the referendum, and anybody who will attempt to oppose it will see the wrath of Kenyans.
What ails us is lack of inclusivity, a winner-take-it-all approach, and things that make these people get to loggerheads in this country. And the way to resolve these issues, the Constitution is made for us, not us for the Constitution. Yes. Nobody can tell us that we cannot go to a referendum because an individual doesn't want it, because an individual wants an all-powerful presidency.
All right, let's now revisit that earlier story of the whereabouts of that 15-year-old girl who was rescued from a forced marriage in Nairobi's Eastleigh Estate, Bats. Her whereabouts now cannot be established for a second straight day.
The girl who was rescued on Sunday by police who had been informed by an activist of the impending marriage went missing on Monday. Her two elder sisters who had been facilitating the planned marriage were released on bond by the courts. Police who said they would hand over the girl to a children's home did not, with the home in Eastleigh confirming the girl was not there. Not only is the girl still missing, with the police refusing to tell us of her whereabouts, but the activists who alerted them to the planned marriage of a minor is now receiving threats from the girl's relatives.
One of the officers who was walking with me alikuwa ameniambia msichana kwa Pangani police station. So nikaenda Pangani na sikumpata Pangani. And then within the police station, one of them wamesema msichana asharudishwa kwa nyumba kwa mama yake. So nikamwambia kwa nini mlirudisha msichana?
The Starehe OCPD Alice Kimeli says she was unaware of the minor's whereabouts, casting even more doubt about the girl's safety. The senior police officer says she would confirm and get back to us but did not. The mystery over the girl's whereabouts has raised serious questions about the role of the police in stopping underage marriages.
The reason why I go back to police station to follow up the case, one of the relatives called me, aliniambia Kenya ni pesa. Kenya ni pesa, kuna watu hata waliuliwa na bado wako nje. So who are you to us? Saving a girl from marriage is just a minor thing. So pesa ndio inaongea.
The role of relevant child protection agency is going to come under increasing scrutiny in the coming days, especially with their loud silence in the face of obvious violations of the right of an underage girl who raised the alarm on a planned forced marriage and asked for help to carry on with her education. The girl has seemingly received no help from the government. Fatma Bogo, NTV.
All right, and we're going to take a very short break here on NTV tonight. But just to remind you, today is Boxing Day. So I'd like to know, do you understand the history behind Boxing Day? Is it, the normal boxing? We'd like to hear from you. Our Twitter handle is at NTV Kenya. Also at Zainab Ismail, the hashtag NTV tonight. Let's take a short break. We'll be back. Welcome back to NTV Tonight, and thank you so much for staying with us. Now, the sugar industry accounts for at least 15% of Kenya's gross domestic product, with more than 300,000 smallholder farmers and supporting at least 6 million people, both directly and indirectly. The challenges of the industry are well known, as the sad tales of the farmers' pain have been told over and over. And for the umpteenth time, a task force to look into the challenges has been appointed. Will it be the one that saves the industry? Well, Zainab reports on the sugarcane.
It is now more than a century since sugarcane farming was first introduced into Kenya, and many of those years brought farmers a lot of wealth. But for the most part, cane production has been equated to poverty, forcing thousands of farmers across the various sugar zones out of production. Effort has been made over the years to revive the industry and even task forces set up, but nothing seems to be working, as the industry only keeps sinking deeper and deeper into debt. And once again, another task force is here, hoping to do what others have failed to do. Will this be the task force that saves the industry?
It is not acceptable that cane factories have been collecting cane from farmers and not paying for it, while we know very well that the demand for sugar has been on the rise.
Uchumi wa miwa umesorota kabisa. Kampuni zetu za Mumias zimefunga. Kampuni yetu ya Nzoia karibu kufunga. Wananchi hawa walikuwa wanategemea kilimo cha miwa.
If you actually look at the coalition government and my government, a period now spanning almost 16 years, government has pumped in almost 20 to 25 billion shillings into the sugar sector, but with no meaningful results.
This is the sad tale of the sugarcane sector, a tale of corruption, debt and poverty. Yet year after year, check after check, the script remains unchanged, including the government's offer of help.
I instructed that a task force be established, chaired by the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture and Governor Wycliffe Oparanya, to report within the month with the recommendations for restructuring this industry.
But for many farmers, this task force offers just a spoonful of hope against the tons of pain afflicting them.
Task force huwa wanachukua watu wao, lakini natakana tuwe wakulima wenyewe. La kwanza tuwe na list.
Kama ningepewa nafasi ya kukaa chini na rais, akuja asikize mkulima wa chini, amwambie shida zake, na kwa shida zetu mkulima huyu wa chini anajua suluhisho ya shida yake, kuliko kuwasikiza wale wanasiasa ambao ndio wale wametunyanyasa sisi kwa muda. Ukiona watu wamekula viwanda yetu ni wanasiasa wakuu katika Kenya hii, na saa hii ndio sasa wamejitwika muziko wa kusema wanatetea yule mkulima. Factors that are killing our factories are known, and we have given to them. Our governors from this region and politicians met and came out with a document. It is spelling out what is killing our factories. Let them look at that. Angalia kampuni kama ya Mumias. Mumias 20% shareholding ni serikali, 80% ni private owners. Pati wakiitisha annual general meeting, si rahisi upate wale 80%. Si rahisi upate wale 80%. Sasa mtu mmoja kutoka treasury anaenda tu Mumias, wameita 500 farmers. But because he's carrying 20%, yeye anachakua directors. Ndio shida ziko Mumias. Directors wenye wako Mumias wamechakuliwa na mtu mmoja kutoka treasury. Director anatoka Nairobi. Akija mkutano Nzoia, atalipwa night out siku mbili. Hiyo ni 36,000. Ametumia gari yake, alipwe mileage 57,000. Akiongezewa sitting allowance yake, hiyo ni 16,000. Director mmoja anapata karibu 100,000 na wako 13. So for a single sitting, hiyo ni 1.3 million. Wangechukua director huku mwenye atatoka nyumbani kwake akienda kwa kiwanda atalipwa sitting allowance ya 16,000 peke yake. Hii pesa ingine inaweza lipwa mkulima.
As county governments within this region, we are committed to revival of the sugar sector, but however, the debts involved are too high. All put together is over 89 billion. In all the state-owned is 89 billion. So this is not a small figure that we at the counties can be able to put in, and if we put in, then it would mean all the money we get, including the salaries, will be put in the sugar sector.
But this is not the first task force to look into the sugar troubles. The Ministry of Agriculture's report on the task force on the sugar industry crisis, released in July 2003, identified major weaknesses of the subsector and recommended radical changes in the institutional structure and management of the subsector. Following the recommendations of the task force, a national sugar conference was held again in October 2004, bringing together all stakeholders to discuss reviving the sector. The conference also gave direction on the shape the sugar policy was to take. Then in February 2006, the ministry prepared sessional paper number 4 called Revitalization of the Sugar Industry, and its proposals were converted into a cabinet memorandum. But in spite of the interest and continuous engagement to attend to the problems identified in the various reports, practical steps to reverse the fortunes of the subsector have remained in the pages of the documents produced. In 2014, Kakamega County also set up a 15-member task force to look into the viability of sugarcane farming, and a report was generated. But that report was not implemented.
The task force came up with very good recommendation. But what I realized that I didn't have capacity to implement some of those recommendations. Capacity in the sense that I needed a lot of finances to do that. Some issues touched on policy, sugar policy, which was beyond my reach because it needed the national government to come up with policy issues in the sugar sector.
But despite such a grim precedent, the government refuses to give up. Kakamega County Governor Wycliffe Oparanya also chairs the Lake Region Economic Bloc and is the co-chair of the recently constituted National Task Force on Sugar. These LREB counties say that a 2-year plan has already been put in place to revive the sugar industry, from which the National Task Force may borrow. Part of LREB's plan includes getting the national government to wipe the debt slate clean for public millers. This plan was presented to President Uhuru Kenyatta at State House just days before he announced the formation of a national task force.
Where he was a bit different from initial thinking was that instead of paying farmers through the factories, they set up a separate account and pay farmers, because his worry is if you transfer this money to the factories, that money may not end up with the farmers, which to some extent we agree with him.
The industry to me does not need that task force because one, like anything in this country, there must be law. Sugarcane has no law. Sugar Act 2001 was repealed and sugar was taken to AFA. But AFA is an amorphous body that it has no even single line talking about sugarcane. One, the president could have made us have the law.
This industry is like a football match where there are two strong teams. They are going to the field is so good, there's a good football, but there's no referee. So that somebody can carry a ball from using his hands and run as fast as possible and push the ball to the goal and score the goal, because there is no referee. In this industry, as I'm talking now, there is no referee. There are no rules. And that's why we're asking the government to make sure that the regulations are put in place so that the playing ground is level, both for farmers and for the millers. Three things must be included in those regulations. First, farmers must be paid within 7 days. If they are not paid, the miller will pay interest to that farmer according to the price, the price that is there then. That's number one. Number two, we are saying cane must be harvested when it is properly mature. That for a long time, farmers have not been paid the byproducts that come from sugarcane. We are saying this time from now on that the farmers must get a share.
For me, I would have wished that a report should be coming from institutions like this, an accounting report on fortnightly basis. Every 2 weeks, say what is wrong, what is right. So that we don't have any situation where we say, you see, we had wanted to do this, but you see, we didn't get. Why can they be reporting to a desk? Every week, you say, we don't have this. Can you arrange for that? So that we are abreast with the goings on in a state. You leave people, you give people freedom, they feel they own something. People should be accountable.
The pain inflicted by the cane still lingers in Kakamega County, mostly because it hosts the Mumias Sugar Factory, the largest mill in East Africa. In its glory days, the mill had at least 100,000 farmers supplying it with cane. But today, Mumias is 20 billion shillings in debt and on its knees. So far, the company has received 3.5 billion shillings in government bailout, but it has done little to fill up the miller's debt hole. Arthur Okoko is among thousands of farmers who've cut down the crop following slashed fortunes from sugarcane farming.
Sasa kitu ambayo nilimfanya mimi ni kutoa miwa. Bado nadai Mumias Sugar. Wana shilingi zangu kwa karibu 40,000. Tangu tukate mwaka wa 2016 kufikia sasa sijalipwa.
When we first met him in 2016, he had been recruited by Mumias Sugar to convince farmers in his village who had uprooted cane to return to cane farming.
Pesa ya miwa, mimi kwangu. Kitu ya kwanza, tumesomesha madugu zangu. Imenisaidia kusomesha madugu zangu. Kitu ya pili, hata nina Nevis. Tumeshawasomesha hadi university wengine. Mimi mwenyewe nimeshafanyia harusi kutoka kwa miwa.
This sugar experiment has, however, turned sour for many sugarcane farmers.
Now that they've carried my crop, which I've really toiled for over 20 months, they should pay me in 30 days. I mean, what's difficult?
One of the things that the task force will consider is whether or not the industry should be fully privatized, especially since the government has already expressed intentions of cutting out the dead weight.
We don't want to use the word privatize. We will be looking for a strategic investor. And that strategic investor will come in. It can even be county government, because I think I remember very well when we had that discussion, the governor of Migori, His Excellency Obando, was keen to participate in Sony. So that strategic investor can still be a county government.
While this may be the last straw for many farmers and millers, a new factory is on the sugar rush. The farm hopes to open its doors in Busia before the end of the year, but where will it get the cane?
The neighboring factories like Mumias, West Kenya itself, Nzoia, even as far as Kisumu, Kibos, you find them collecting cane from Busia County for a very long time. So that means that there's a big potential in this county in terms of cane growing.
The Busia sugar industry, owned by former Mombasa Mayor Ali Taib, has already established a 5,000-acre nucleus in Busibwabu, Busia, and needs a total of 18,000 hectares of cane in order to be profitable. In order to feed this capacity, the factory would need a minimum of 100 acres of cane cleared per day, which translates to 250 tractors on the road each day.
Optimum capacity, we are talking of 3,500 tons in a day. That's what's required to, and there's a possibility of expansion.
We'll need about 50,000 farmers. That would require to have cane to grow, so that we can be able to, and out of 55,000 farmers, That is about, they should be having about 45,000 acres under cane.
Coming at a time when there's little hope left for the sugar industry, the Busia Sugar Industries hopes to pick up the husks and succeed where others have failed.
Number one, unlike other factories that are just coming to collect raw materials to go and process it some other place, we are within the farmers that have been hurt. So they are going to see us 24/7, doing what we are going to do best. Secondly, we are going to have their sons and their daughters every day going back to their homes telling them that I'm tired, Baba, Mama, I've been working to produce this sugar. So it's something that is real, not unimagined. Thirdly, we are prepared to pay them in time. Unlike the way others have been staying with the payment of farmers, tuko tayari kulipa wakulima in good time. And I'm sure these are the basic things that are going to attract farmers to get back into cane. Number four, we are also determined to participate in community social responsibility activities. Despite the fact that we have not even started milling, we are already engaged. For example, currently we are supplying seedlings for fruits, seedlings for other trees to the schools around.
So all these things you say, rosy things, Mumias has done with that.
Yes.
Mumias is where the farmers are.
True.
Mumias has hired locals. Mumias opened schools. Mumias town is thriving because Mumias was what Mumias is. But then it's failing. Kibos may not be where farmers are, but it was paying farmers on time. But it has started running into trouble. What is your path from today all the way to 5 years and 10 years? Have you seen all that trouble coming your way, and how do you expect to move away from it?
We fully recognize actually the challenges that all those companies you mentioned have faced. But one key advantage that Busia Sugar Industry is going to enjoy is being a private company. As we speak as an administrator, right now if I have an issue that is burning, I have an access to the owner, to the investor, to the MD, who can give me authority and implement it. Unlike the parastatals, where there's a lot of bureaucracies. You have a bright manager, but he cannot implement whatever ideas he has.
You can't have a free-for-all industry. We have looked at it and we feel that it's very important that we create regions and we also regulate how many factories we should have. Because you cannot have factories dotted everywhere and there's no raw material. That's what results into sugar poaching. We must make a decision that do we need all the state-owned factories that we have. A place like Chemelil, Mohoroni and Miwani, I think it's viable to have just one factory. We can leave Sony to be there. We can leave Mumias to be here in Kakamega. And then, of course, have Doia in Bungoma. And then now control or regulate which other factories we should have. And I think this area, we are already saturated.
The factory was supposed to have started milling on the 26th of November, but it has faced obstacle after obstacle and has been forced to postpone opening. Already there's a case in court seeking to keep its doors permanently shut.
Sugar sector has a lot of cartels, I can tell you. And those particular cartels do not allow new entrants. If you enter in, then they know you are really going to interfere with what they do. And that's why you have seen importations, uncontrolled importations coming in, people being threatened that they will go to court for excessive importation. Up to now, have you heard of anybody who has been taken to court for excessive importation of sugar? It's because of the cartels that we have. I'm hopeful that as we come up with this report that we intend to come up to, and we give it to the president, there will be a new line of looking at the sugar industry, new way of doing things within that sugar industry, so that the industry is as competitive like any other sector.
For the factory, it is now a waiting game. But when it does open, it hopes to develop at least 3,000 hectares of cane per day in order to reach maximum capacity within 4 years. And as Busia sugar industry paints a rosy future for itself, Kakamega and Bungoma counties are already working on an exit plan to provide the farmers with alternative money-making ventures.
An investor who's coming in to do a factory that will be doing liquid glucose, and that factory will be getting the raw materials to be cassava. So we're going to be encouraging cassava farming, and that will help actually shift the farmers slowly from sugarcane farming to cassava. Secondly, as a county government, we also want to focus on dairy farming. Thirdly, we also want to encourage coffee farming. As you know, the prices on the international market of coffee are very lucrative as we speak now. So we're going to be encouraging coffee farming. And as we speak, my deputies in the US looking for a market, a direct market for our coffee in Bungoma County. So yes.
Today, Bungoma County is the 4th biggest coffee producer in the country and has started offering incentives to farmers to encourage more production. Kakamega, on the other hand, has commissioned a study to evaluate the county's resources and soils as it looks to venture into vegetable farming. Dairy farming is also being pushed as an alternative. Zainab Wandati, NTV.
Right, and that are just the sour tales of sugarcane farmers from the western counties. And of course, we'd like to hear your sentiments in regard to that report by our reporter Zainab Wandati. Quite intriguing and startling revelations there, and even corruption playing out on the sugarcane. The hashtag is the sugarcane, and I'm receiving quite a number of feedback already on the same. I'll just be able to sample some of those. At Nyamora saying farmers seem to be doing their part. The sugarcane. At Big Brother Cafe saying cartels want to kill the sugarcane so that they keep importing sugar into the country. We also have here at Amabalala saying, so we are now discouraging farmers from the sugar industry now. We really need to take this conversation seriously, people. Well, the hashtag is the sugarcane. We'd like to hear from you on those sour tales of the sugarcane industry. And the conversation continues at NTV Kenya, our Twitter handle at Zainab Ismail, at Zainab Wandati. Let's take a short break.